There was some gloomy news from the tech sector last month. The country's biggest IT company, Tata Consultancy Services, which is also the largest private sector employer of women, said that it has seen a higher attrition among women than among men since the company asked employees to return to office. What's worrying is that this goes against the historical pattern at the company, wherein women's attrition has been similar or lower than men's attrition. The company's chief HR officer said in the FY23 annual report that while there might be several reasons for this, but intuitively he says, and I quote from the report, working from home during the pandemic reset the domestic arrangements for some women, keeping them from returning to office even after everything normalized. Now, why this is so important is that TCS, like I said, is not just India's biggest private sector employer. It was also ranked as the top employer of women among the 500 most valuable corporations in the country in a Hurun survey from December of 2022. What has added to the concern about women's attrition is the new labor force participation data for FY23 that came out last week. Labor force participation rate essentially reflects the share of the working age population in the country, which includes people above 15 years of age who are either employed or are actively looking for employment. Now, here's the shocker. The data, published by the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, shows that the female labor participation rate has fallen to a mere 8.8%. This is almost half from the nearly 15% participation rate in the year 2016-17. What does this mean? Over 90% of all working age women in India are not employed and are also not seeking employment, as per this new data. Of course, there have always been some discrepancies about these metrics, and some analysts and experts instead go by the International Labour Organization, which recently said the female workforce participation in India was 24% in 2022. Unsurprisingly, this number and the calculation have also been debated by government officials who say that the participation is much higher. But let's not get carried away by the data debate, because there's definitely a big reason to worry when it comes to women's participation in the workforce. Is this happening across the industry? Is it just the return to office pressure that is triggering the exodus? Or is there more? To understand the issue better, in this episode, I speak to Rituparna Chakraborty, co-founder and board member of staffing firm TeamLease, and PwC India's Deputy Chief People Officer Shireen Sehgal, along with some female professionals on their experiences. It's Friday, the 7th of July. I'm Mugdha Warrior from ET Prime, and you're listening to the Morning Brief episode on why India's working women are logging out. We should have seen this coming. Last year, several surveys showed that women were hesitant about the return to office mandate. For example, as per a LinkedIn survey which interviewed over 2,000 respondents in India last year, 8 in 10 working women said they had realized they want to work more flexibly. In fact, the survey found that 72% of working women were rejecting job roles that don't allow them to work flexibly. Take, for example, Delhi-based Jyot Prakash Kaur, a professional in the development sector or the NGO space. She has moved out of 2 jobs over the past 2 years because of the inflexible work, since she wanted to focus on her health and her personal life as she was getting married.
If you are traveling 2.5 hours in a day and then, you are sitting in office for 8.5 hours, your majority of your time is gone, right? And then I actually had a conversation with the HR and I spoke to them about it, that we tested work from home. It was running really very well. Even the clients preferred an online meeting. So why are we pushing the staff to come back to office? Their logic is the trust was not there. The organization did not trusted the people enough that in the work from home setup that they would be 100% productive or 100% available for work. And then I did not really see anything moving. I also did not see any intention. So that was the time I realized that if I get an opportunity in the development sector with a hybrid model and a more flexible work, I will choose that. So then I started scouting for opportunities. And then finally, I found an organization which is giving me a hybrid model.
A lot of this seems to be playing out now. A recent ET report highlighted that attrition of women has doubled compared with that of men in the technology industry since December of 2022, as more companies asked employees to return to office. The data from interview solutions platform Incruiter, sourced from recruiters and exit interview firms, showed that female employee attrition has reached as high as 30 to 40% in recent months, much above the standard attrition levels of around 15% in the tech sector. Again, some in the tech industry argue that this number could be too high, but everyone agrees that there definitely is a problem. But why? Women have been going to office before the pandemic, right? So what has changed now? I asked Rituparna Chakraborty, co-founder and board member of staffing firm TeamLease.
I think the fact that when there is this massive now drive by organizations to get everyone back to office, we are seeing the first set of people at workplaces who are reacting to this, of course, are the women employees, right? So it's, of course, a reality, it's a fact. But it's also a fact that even without something like this happening, we have fewer and fewer women actually coming to work in the first place. In 1987, women workforce participation used to be above 35%. It's pathetic, and it is probably now one of the lowest worldwide. It's around 21% that I last checked. Now, the issue is that, yes, COVID changed a lot of dynamics for women. There was very little support system those days, which means there were no maids, there were no nannies, there was no daycare, childcare. So the responsibility essentially were getting shared within the family. And we all know that disproportionately more, of course, amongst the women. And what happened is that when suddenly you have the emphasis that you have to come back to office, inevitably, the adjustments which have already fallen in place are getting disrupted. And hence, one has to look for alternate solutions. And India is going through a problem where childcare support systems are not in place, that inevitably, who is the one who makes the choice of essentially staying back at home, or who would prefer to stay back at home, is the woman. And I honestly feel that it's not that if, let's say, organization didn't insist on coming back to office, it's not that our workforce participation overall in a larger scheme of things would massively improve or change. I honestly feel that, yes, women need flexibility, but it's important to also understand that in what form and shape is it that women need that flexibility. And I'm actually raising this as a contrarian opinion, that one of the reasons India's workforce participation is so low is because a large number of unpaid work in Indian calculations, so when we put together data, never gets considered. And more women stays at home, their share of work, unpaid work, that a woman member in the family will end up doing as against a male member will constantly increase. So while in the short run, for women, it's a disruption, but in the long run, I think I can make a case with a number of reasons why it would make sense for women to come back to office, and they will, honestly.
Companies on their part say they're going the extra mile to bring back all employees to office. Here's what consultancy firm PwC India's Deputy Chief People Officer Shireen Sehgal has to say.
So once we wanted to get people back in the office, and like I say, it's gender neutral, but of course, a little more extended support to women colleagues, flexible work arrangements that we sort of could give them from a balance of work-life perspective. We never wanted people to sort of come in for the full days. There was no really clocking in of hours. Telecommuting was another example of where people wanted to continue to work remotely and then work on arrangements. We got that in. We've recently revisited our parental policies. So, trying to get 30-day paternity leave for the male colleagues also helped, because They can now do more childcare in terms of getting women back to their career trajectory. Childcare support, of course, has been one of our continued programs where we continue to give them compensatory support, spending support for crutches. So whether they want to come in once a week, twice a week, our recommendation is to connect. Our recommendation is to meet your people. And I think with that stand, we've been fairly successful in sort of getting our people back into the office, if not every day, at least once a week or twice a week. That's been our stand.
Have you seen equal participation of women and men in returning to office?
To a large extent. We enjoy about 30%, 35% diversity averagely across levels in PwC in India, and of course, a little more at the entry levels. But coming back to work has been a reflection of what the team constituents have been. So I don't think there's been a very difference in terms of gender or people wanting to come back to work from a gender per se.
So, Shireen, some industry data shows that attrition may be rising due to the mandate to come back to office, especially among women employees. What trends are you seeing?
To some extent, maybe in the last few months, while the industry opened up and a lot of new industries came up during the big resignation, right? New companies came up, a lot of attrition started to happen, and a lot many varied remote working options started to happen. We did see a little bit of skew in a few months, but I don't think there's been aggregated data to prove that women leave more than men in our firm. But we could see pit stops of different months happening. We are operating in a hybrid environment. I don't think we've seen a notable exodus of only women leaving because of asking them to come back 1 day or 2 days. I think attrition continues to be gender neutral for us from that respect.
So, the issue of higher attrition among women due to return to office may not be universal. In fact, some of TCS's IT peers also didn't report this trend. But if the larger data on the participation of women in the workforce is seen, and whichever data set you choose to look at, the problem is clear that more women are leaving the workforce. And the return to office could just be another factor fueling this concerning trend. In fact, it could be symptomatic of a larger issue, says Rituparna.
India is plagued with a much, much, much bigger issue of fewer and fewer women actually joining the workforce. In India, which is interestingly peculiar, is that as over the last few years, the level of education of women kept increasing, their participation in the labor workforce actually started decreasing. This is something that has been bothering me a lot, and hence I personally have read on this and I've chatted with few economists, and they said that it's a curve, it's a cycle. So when there is some kind of, and especially in developing economies, when the economies start showing some improvement, the women actually get more educated. And the first option for them is education is essentially to get them better groomed. And with the growing economy, two people need not work, and then you're married to a highly qualified groom. Thereon, studies show that when that phase continues for a while and then there is overall economic improvement, women will have growing aspirations because they have enough income in the household where a lot of the domestic chores were getting done through help, through supports, through tools, so on and so forth. So then women essentially aspire then to go out, they work. These are studies which actually show that when more and more women are going out, female labor force participation obviously will improve. You will also see that the gap in terms of pay, gender gap, also reducing over a period of time. So essentially, India is probably going through a cyclical phase right now, Mukta. If we do the right things, as a country, towards formalization, towards ensuring that we are creating an engine of economic progress, it will also help the cause of women. I'm not saying it's so easy. Of course, there's a lot to be done by organizations, the society, from a change in regulations perspective, and women per se, the choices that we're making. All of this essentially needs to go hand in hand to be able to achieve this objective.
So, can this attrition that we're seeing also be seen from this lens of privilege that women may have now to decide, okay, they don't want to go to office or travel to office. They would rather work from home. And if that's not an option, they're okay to take that break.
Now, I think women have that option to be able to temporarily take a break. But then I think this is a part of a phase, and I feel it's temporary in nature. I do believe all these women who today or have been coming actually to office to work during the COVID got used to working from home. And when I say used to, essentially they made certain readjustments in their household to kind of be able to do work remotely. That's a sudden shock. So one of the reasons they're leaving is because they've not been able to readjust to the reality. But I think over a period of time, there is a case for women to come back to office. And I would be surprised if they don't.
The data around attrition of women has another concerning statistic, which has been a cause of worry for a long time, that more women are exiting at the middle levels. Mid-level employees usually have between 10 to 20 years of work experience. At TCS, the share of mid-level female employees dropped from 31.1% in FY22 to 30.7% in FY23. The ET report on attrition in the tech industry I cited earlier also showed that women in mid-level roles are the ones leaving the most. For many women, the biological clock also becomes a factor around this time, and they often take a break to start a family. But several women tend to drop out even after returning from their maternity break. Michelle George, a talent business partner at a global tech consultancy in Pune, tells us about her decision to take a career break, which extended to 7 years.
My child had a lot of feeding issues and had to be admitted in the NICU when he was just 2.5 weeks old. So when I restarted work when he was 5 months, the separation anxiety, which people say will usually go off in 2-3 months, it never went off for him. So till the day that I quit, when he was 2 years and 10 months, every morning when I would leave to work at 8:15, he would hold on to my feet and he would cry and say, "No, mama." And my nanny had to drag him away. So that is a sight that I live with every single day for around 2 years. That is how I had to leave from home.
So, Michelle, new mothers especially speak of this guilt that they have, right? Whether it is internal, whether that guilt is from external sources about, leaving your child at home and still pursuing your career. How do you deal with it?
So the mommy guilt is such a real thing that is just taken for granted by everyone. There were times when, someone will inadvertently comment, "Oh, you have a child, a job can wait. There are other people who can take a job. If tomorrow you leave it, someone else can always do it. But your child only has you for a mother," and which is true. So the guilt is something which is just so strong, and it's social conditioning, but women just take the load on ourselves. This idea of being a superwoman. None of the fathers or the men aspire to be a superman. But for women, that is just a done thing.
So well said. It's like a woman thinks that being a superwoman is something that you should aspire to, but it really shouldn't be the norm. Now, at one point, then you decided to take a break from work, and that break kind of extended to 7 years. Tell us about that.
So the idea of a break was never in my mind. The thought of quitting never really occurred to me till my son was 13 months old and my husband went on a business trip. And that time, luckily, my mother happened to come, thank God, which is when my son had wheezing for the very first time. Now, I hadn't seen wheezing ever before, and I didn't realize how scary it was to see a small child not being able to breathe. And he needed to be given the inhaler every 2 hours. So every morning, I would leave home at around 8 o'clock, take my son to the hospital to give him the nebulizer, and then go to office, reach by 9, and then come back home by, say, 7:30, by which time my nanny would have left. And the inhaler had to be given every 2 hours. My mother was just there throughout, and she just said, "This is no way to live." And I was like, what option do I have? But thereafter, as he became older, he was not talking. So he was 2.5 years and he wasn't talking. So I took the decision to quit because my parents were also telling me that, listen, it was your choice to bring a child into this world. Your child didn't have a choice, right? So since you have taken the decision to bring a child into the world, and if your child so obviously needs your presence, then you take that break. 2 months after I quit my job, my son started speaking so fluently. People who hadn't met him before would never believe that he was a child who didn't speak.
For a lot of women, the pressure to focus on childcare over work comes not only from the family, but from several other quarters.
At that time in Pune, there was this norm. It still exists. It's not said, it's an unsaid norm that if the mother has a good job, which means a job which requires her to work long hours and things like that, then it is difficult for the child to get admission into a good school because the schools feel that if the mothers are working and have hectic jobs, they will not have enough time to focus on the child's education, and hence it is obviously extra work for the schools and the teachers, right? So that was my thought process. I was like, okay, I'll take a break for 6 to 7 months. But I enjoyed my break so much. I actually lost so much of weight. I was always overweight throughout my life. Decided to extend my break and spend time with the second child and, enjoy that years of motherhood that I missed out with my first child.
Michelle took the call to take a break. It's not just in India that women have to grapple with work life imbalance. Surveys in countries like the United States have also shown that women continue to disproportionately carry the burden of housework and childcare. I asked Rituparna why this happens.
Flexibility of working from home has been given to male members, male employees, and female employees equally, right? No one has said that this work from home is just for women and not for males. But surprisingly, even males who had that option, by the way, to work from home are not availing that option and preferring to come to work. Why? Maybe a woman in that household is going in the reverse direction. Why? Because there is no equitable sharing of household work and unpaid work between the male members and the female members. Then somehow we are accepting it.
So, what are the implications of so many women dropping out of the workforce, even if it is temporary? This trend is often referred to as the leaking pipeline, wherein a lot of women disappear from the workforce in the move from junior roles to senior positions. A new NASSCOM Aeon report on diversity, equity, and inclusion in India shows that women constitute only 17% of a boardroom and only 5% of Nifty 500 organizations have female CEOs. The report says that only 30% of the organizations have more than 20% female participation at senior management levels. I asked PwC India's Shireen on the trends at her company around mid-level attrition.
We do have a slightly leaky talent pipeline when it comes to our middle levels, and there tends to be a potential decline of women representation, but nothing very varied to the industry. I mean, we see that quite a bit when it comes to the Indian setup of women who lead their lives in a career-oriented environment.
Fewer women in leadership roles means lesser say on policies that need to be suited for women. And this also leads to the widening of the gender pay gap, especially when women look to return to the workforce after a career break. Take Michelle's example.
During my job search, there was actually a firm which called me and told me that you would have to take a pay cut. And imagine, I would have to take a pay cut in 2022 from the pay that I was earning in 2015. 7 years back, and the person expected me to take a pay cut, notwithstanding the inflation that has obviously happened and the market that has moved so much. And the person also said that you would not be given any flexibility. You would have to come to office every day. And the office timings would be 12 to 9. So at that, the location of the office was such that I would have a 3.5 hour commute every day, which meant I would never get to see my kids.
Thankfully, Michelle was able to land a job she is happy with, which has a good culture, and more importantly, it allows remote work.
My role, the reason why I'm able to manage it well is only because I've got a permanently work from home profile. It's a remote job. But if I had to go to office every day, it would have been way too stressful, and I'm not too sure I would have been able to manage it. I would have probably decided that, okay, this is not something that I can continue to manage. Running a household and taking care of 2 kids single-handedly without even a nanny, it would have become very difficult for me to manage. So if the work from office mandate had been there for me, I'm sure I would have.
Over the past few years, a new term has become a frequent part of corporate parlance: DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion. The NASSCOM Aon report on the DEI landscape in India, released in June, shows that despite many companies setting up budgets and programs for better gender diversity in the workforce, there is still a gap between rhetoric and reality. It says the representation of women in organizations still stays low, with only 20% of them reporting gender diversity of 40% and higher. But companies are pushing to increase the share of women and are even helping women re-enter the workforce after a break. It also makes economic sense for them, Rituparna says.
I think the economic reasons why countries should improve women labor workforce participation and how individual organizations stand to gain in terms of driving their business performance by having more women there are enough and more data out there, honestly, which says that it's given that organization will become richer. And then that's probably one of the reasons you see that, especially with large multinational organizations, it's a big target, goal, and so on and so forth. I'm seeing some e-commerce companies also recently kind of trying to focus on it because their diversity ratios are quite pathetic because of the nature of the job. But they're still taking up targets like having 25% of the workforce. Pretty much the gold standard right now for most organizations is that let's get diversity ratio to up to about 30%. Anything above 25, 30%, let's aim for that. But the thing is, somewhere I personally feel that there possibly could be a little bit of lack of understanding of what exactly women want and the way organizations are thinking in terms of what women think, what they can do for women. A lot of organizations, for them, it's a checklist. Like having women on board is a checklist because that makes you compliant. The fact is, most of the organizations today have we are not thinking about the fact that childcare support system is a real problem for women. And we have left it to the individuals to kind of solve for and deal with it. Somewhere, while it is as part of our labor law regulations where employers are mandated to have, let's say, a creche or whatever, we know in reality, because of whatever practical challenges, most organizations do not have that.
Will the return to office mandate add to the falling participation of women in the workforce? Or does it represent a larger problem which needs to be addressed by all stakeholders? For now, experts and industry members suggest that the dropout among women due to the return to office may be a temporary blip, and that these women will return to work soon. But the crux of the issue about women shouldering more domestic responsibilities may still take some time to change. And as long as the career pipeline remains leaky, there will be fewer women at the top to make the important decisions. That's all in this episode. I'm Mugdha Warrior, and you're listening to The Morning Brief. This episode was produced by Sumit Pandey and sound editor Rajas Nayak. Executive producers Anupriya Nair, Anirban Chaudhary, and Arijit Burman. Thank you for listening. If you like this episode, do share it on your social media networks. A new episode of the Morning Brief podcast drops every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. It streams on Amazon Prime Music, JioSaavn, Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts, and of course, ET's own audio platform, ET Play. Have a great weekend ahead.